welcome to Ignite Your Power, the Kathy Mou Podcast. And today I have Lauriann with me, and she is a hair loss special life coach. And she does research on this, and she has dedicated her life into teaching people about hair loss. So we'll dive deep about the why, how it happens, and what we can do to help with this. And I know at least everybody has had to deal with it on their own or has met somebody or knows somebody who has done this. So, Lori Ann, if you can introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, Kathy. It's nice to be here. I'm Lauriann Greene, and as Kathy said, I have a hair loss coaching program called Hair Loss Heroines, and I have hair loss myself for the past 40 years. In fact, I have had a kind of autoimmune hair loss. There are all kinds of different hair loss. It's one of the things that I teach. And I'm also a medical researcher. So I've been researching this topic for decades. And of course, to find out about myself, but also to help other people. And I am now launching Hair Loss Heroines. And I'm happy to be here and to talk to you about it.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And so let's talk about how you became, a hair loss coach and what was your journey and how did you have to become where you are now? Like what things you had to empower yourself to become this amazing person that you are.
Oh, thank you. Well, I will keep it short because I've done many different things in my life. But um, I had a business that went under because of COVID. I had a travel business. And when that happened, I questioned myself about, well, what do I want to do now? And I am older. Like I said, I've had hair loss for 40 years. So I have a lot more perspective on it now. So I felt that it was something that I could help other people with because I have perspective that people who are just, they're just beginning to lose their hair, or it's been a year and they still don't know what to do about it. It's people like that, that I would be able to help them. So, because I think you need perspective, you need to not be going through the trauma yourself to be able to help other people who are going through the trauma. So I decided that I would create a course so that people could learn all of the practical knowledge that they need and coaching, because it's hard to go through this alone, just like, any physical thing that happens to you or emotional thing. It's hard to go through it alone. And when you have a coach, when you have somebody who, especially somebody who really gets it, because I've been there, I'm still there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I thought that I'd be able to help people. And so far, the people who have taken the coaching program have told me that it really helped them.
That's
So
amazing.
I'm glad that I was able to put together something that seems to be effective.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, this is going to be so helpful for people. So how does hair loss actually happen? Like when does it happen?
Well, hair loss can happen at any age.
Wow.
Um, there are, sorry to say, there are 2-year-olds who have hair loss. There are 90-year-olds who have hair loss and everybody in between. Of course, we all know that men lose their hair because we see lots of bald men, but it's not so well known that women lose their hair. And in fact, 50% of women experience hair loss in their lives. And once you're past 65, it goes up to 65%. So it's a very common problem. And it happens at any age because there are so many reasons that it happens. It can be stress. It can be weight loss, like extreme weight loss. It can be diseases. I personally have a disease that caused my hair follicles to die, and not completely because I still have hair, but many of them died. And gosh, people lose hair at pregnancy, any big hormonal change, pregnancy, menopause, um, some traumatic things like if you're in a car accident or somebody dies, God forbid, or you had COVID. A lot of hair loss has been linked to COVID.
Really? Why is
Yeah.
that? How is that?
Well, um, COVID is a pretty serious condition. It's a serious illness, and people tend to get very high fevers.
Mm,
And a high fever is very hard on the body. And one of the ways the body reacts is by shedding hair.
yeah.
So it's really anything that's stressful or traumatic or physically difficult for your body, you will tend to lose hair. Now, sometimes it can just grow back. Like, with pregnancy, I don't know if you had this experience,
Yeah.
but a lot of people, a lot of women lose hair right after they give birth. But within that's a condition called telogen effluvium.
Mm,
Just to give you the fancy name, TE, and it's temporary hair loss. And once your hormones calm down, in about 3 to 12 months, usually the hair comes back. It's the same thing with menopause. Usually it comes back. Same thing with stress. If you go through a very stressful period, usually what happens is telogen effluvium, and then it just slowly grows back on its own. Hair takes a while to kind of absorb the shock and then calm down and then start the hair growth cycle all over again.
wow.
But there are a lot of other types of hair loss, including hereditary hair loss, that you inherit from your parents, your grandparents, that the hair does not tend to grow back, but you can keep more from falling out. There are medications
Mm, oh,
that can
wow.
do that, not for everybody, but for a lot of people. So it can happen at any time, and as you can see, there's so many reasons that it can happen that
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, my husband. So when I got pregnant and then we moved into our home, he was so stressed out. He had like a little patch, just a patch that he
Uh,
lost hair. And he was like freaking out, like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Is it ever gonna grow back? I mean, eventually he grew back with just white hair, but I told him, I was like, I'm pretty sure it's through stress. Like he was just
yeah,
stressing out, like making sure, we had the house ready for baby to
right.
come and so why is it patchy? Like sometimes why would it just be in a patch?
Well, people have, it's very individual the way you lose
Mm,
hair. Some people will get patchy hair loss. That can be a sign of something called alopecia areata. Areata means areas. So some people get this patchy kind of thing. Other people, a lot of women get just this area in the crown will start, like your part will get wider and wider and it'll just sort of spread out and get thinner. That's very common, but it's very individual. So apparently he didn't have alopecia areata because it grew back and he hasn't had anything else happen since then. So
yeah.
sometimes, yeah, it just happens that way. There's still a lot that we don't understand about hair loss, unfortunately. But the scientists are working on it.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. And you are part of that research and helping other people figure this out.
Yeah.
Why hair loss happens, and in our culture, we love hair, but it does vanish,
Yes.
obviously, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
that's actually something that is good to talk about. Yes, we love hair. We associate, especially with women, we associate hair with beauty, with
Mhm.
femininity, and with desirability.
Mhm.
It's a way to attract a man or a woman, to attract a partner. So, and we are told from the time we're little kids, this kind of thing, that, to be beautiful, you have to have beautiful hair. And so when women lose their hair, they often are devastated by it because they lose their sense of
Mhm.
identity. They feel they're ugly. They feel that they don't want to go out of the house anymore. They don't want anybody to see them like this. It really takes a big emotional toll on women because we're told from such an early age, it's ingrained in us that if you don't have hair, you're not a woman.
Yeah.
So, and it's unfortunate. We put a lot of, in this culture, especially, we put a lot of emphasis on physical beauty.
Yeah.
And if you don't, measure up, then you can feel very bad about yourself. And women get even very bad anxiety and clinical depression as a result of that. I remember when I first started losing my hair when I was 19, 20 years old. I didn't want to go out of the house. I was terribly upset, and I don't think I went out of the house for a while. So I remember that feeling. You just feel like, people are going to stare at me.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's very, very hard. And that's one of the things that I really address because people need support for that.
Yeah, they do. So you just said this question that I really want to ask because, you were really in that really sad part in your life, right? I don't know if you ever had depression or anxiety from hair loss, but what did you have to do to actually get yourself out of that state of being in fear of not showing yourself to the world because you were going through something like this?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. I did have a boyfriend at the time, and he said to me, I hardly see it. It's nothing, so that was helpful. And there were things that I really wanted to do. And I just got to the point where I couldn't stay home all the time. I needed to go out and go to school and do what I wanted to do. And I guess the desire to do things and to continue living my life was stronger than my fear of what people would think of me. And I realized when I did start going out of the house that actually people weren't staring at me. It's something that we worry about, but that rarely happens unless you're totally bald. I mean, you see a totally bald woman walking down the street, most people would look, but my hair just looked thin, so I guess I was lucky in that way. But yeah, I had a strong will. I had a
Mm,
will to that this wasn't going to let me. It wasn't going to make me stop what I really wanted to do. So that got me through it.
that's amazing. So do you feel like it had to come from within you? Like you had to empower yourself. You had to, like change your mindset, start loving yourself so then you can show up in the world in this positive way.
Yes, I felt that I had things I wanted to do, and I felt I had things to offer. And I've always had a very strong feeling that I wanted to have a good life and do interesting things, and I didn't want to be limited. So I got to a point where I said, well, this just isn't going to limit me. I'm just going to have to force myself to go out of the house. It's going to be hard at first. I'll get used to it, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I have a strong personality and I'm a strong person. Now there are women who don't have those characteristics and they're not able to pull themselves out of it without help. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, not everybody can do that. I happen to be able to do it. But that's why I do the coaching is because some people get stuck in that, and they need a coach to help them get out of it.
That's amazing. That's so true. Because same thing with me when I went through infertility and I was going through depression. I was strong-willed, and then I figured out I had endometriosis, so I had to just learn, just deal with it, do some self-love, self-care things, change my mindset, and then like my life started to change in the way I wanted. So if someone is going through a tough time right now, if you're listening or you have hair loss, etc., or just going through a rough time in life, we're both examples of how you can overcome something. It's just, if you have it within you to want to. And there are resources out there, right? Again, there's so much
Yes.
resources out there.
Right. And there are people like us who
Yeah.
work with people to help them. Part of what I do is I remind people who they are because they've lost track of it. The hair is going away and it's such a shock and they just can't get over the shock. And I remind them, you have inner strength, you have the capacity to change. You can change your mindset about this. We talk a lot about that um, we're all kinds of victims of this emphasis on beauty in our society.
Mhm.
And we can say no to that. We
Yeah.
can say, I am what I am. I mean, people who are disabled or people who have other kinds of disfiguring diseases or conditions, you have to have a strong sense of yourself. And sometimes you need somebody else to remind you that you're still you and you still have a lot to offer.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. So that's one thing you can do to, help with hair loss, I'm sure. Like, what other things can people do to help with hair loss? Say they're not ready to come out and find a coach and, really learn to love themselves. What can they do at home to start in this journey?
Well, one of the first things that I talk about in the coaching program is starting a self-care routine.
Mm.
So I give them what I call a ritual to do every morning. Now, I don't know if they do it every morning, but if they do it 3 times a week, it's already pretty good. So every morning is better, but you know, not everybody does what you ask.
Yeah.
So, the self-care ritual starts with mindfulness-based stress reduction, which I have studied from the man who invented this in the 70s, John Kabat-Zinn. It's actually an evidence-based technique that's based on meditation and but it's meditation not for the spiritual aspect of it but for the stress reduction aspect of it, so it's a little bit different, but when you see people doing it, it looks like they're meditating. They do at least 15 minutes of that. If they can do 20, that's great. Of course, they can start with 5, go to 10, go to 15, go to 20. Sometimes they have to work up to it. A lot of people are not used to just sitting still and trying to be totally present now and let everything else go. But one of the reasons that that's important with hair loss is that people tend to start living in the past and living in the future. In the past, they're beating themselves up because they must have done something to make the hair loss happen. So they feel guilty. And then in the future, they're busy obsessively worrying about, well, is it going to keep falling out? Am I going to end up bald? What's going to happen? And of course, the past is gone, so there's nothing we can do about it. And the present hasn't happened yet. So again, there's nothing we can do about it. We have no control over these things. The only thing we can control is the present. So I try to bring them to the present and allow the future and the past to let that go. And just that is very actually quite difficult for a lot of people. So we start with that, then we do gratitude because gratitude reminds you, it gives you perspective. It reminds you that hair loss is not the only thing that's happening in your life, that there are actually good things that are happening to you that you are grateful for. And then we do affirmations, and I give them a long list of affirmations because sometimes people have trouble thinking of their own. And the biggest affirmation, there's two of them. I am enough. And the other one is I am not my hair.
Oh, yeah,
So, yeah, I'm so much more than my hair.
those are beautiful.
So, yeah. So, and that little ritual takes about half an hour. But if you can start your day like that, you're already 10 steps ahead.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah. And I try to practice that as well.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you're living this bliss off life, and it's a concept that I came up with. So if you
I
have not
know.
heard about the bliss off life, let me just explain it a little bit for new listeners. So it's like a concept of living in your power, loving yourself, loving your life, not letting fear, overwhelm, or stress like dictate your life. It's literally living in the present moment, like what you just said, learning to live in the present, learn to love yourself, saying affirmations. It's so beautiful. So, you know, I I believe that you're preaching and teaching about the bliss soft life in your own way,
Oh, yeah.
obviously, but that's so
Right.
beautiful. And it's a very key piece though that a lot of us think that this is basic. It's supposed to be basic learning, but it's really not, right? We're grown up to learn the opposite.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, I don't think we learn this until we're adults and maybe we're in a super stressful situation and we have to do something. And then we start learning these
Yeah,
what's important and what's not. And unfortunately, it's not part of this culture to learn these kinds of things.
yeah. So do
So
you so do you think you're living like the bliss soft life or at least trying to apply it every day?
I'm trying. I don't always get there. It's
Yeah.
not natural for me. It's something I believe in very much, but it doesn't come naturally. So it kind of comes and goes. But, if when I'm able to do it, it's really helpful. So I just, the more you try it, the more you believe that it's important. Hopefully with time, it will become more and more present in my life.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's so true because I never understand how living blissfully felt like. And it's truly living in the present moment. Like when you don't think about the past or the present, or I mean, the past or the future, right? Because your mind is always giving you so much negative thoughts when you're in that
Yes,
state. When you think of the past and the future, it's all negative thoughts, right?
yes,
Most likely.
true.
It's always stress or overwhelm, right?
Yes.
And then when you're in the present, you're just like literally basking in whatever you're doing, which is beautiful. So for me, I finally understood this and I was like, oh, this is what bliss feels like, I believe,
Mm,
like
that's wonderful.
just watching my daughter like play around and me being able to be present in this moment, and we take these little moments for granted. And I think a lot of us don't, right? Because we're always in our minds like, "Oh my god, what's the next
Yes,
thing I have to do?" Or, "If I don't do this, my future is gonna be affected." Or, like,
right.
why am I stuck in the past? Like, "Oh my gosh, I messed up. I didn't do something." Or, "Why didn't I do this?" So then now it's affecting my present and future. And it's like, whoa, slow down. Is
Yeah.
it all man-made in your mind? Or
Yes.
is that actually in the present moment? So this is a key
Yeah.
piece that I want people to really learn and take away if you know, are watching this, because I feel like a lot of people struggle with the present moment. And I love that you teach that. I love it so much.
Yeah, I think people struggle with the present moment because that's where your real feelings lie. And by always being in the future or the past, you're avoiding who you really are and what you're really feeling. And when you're in the present, you're just sitting with your feelings. And
Mm,
people are very uncomfortable with that because it could bring up something sad, could bring up something, some trauma from the past. It could bring up wonderful things too, but since we don't do it very often, I think we are afraid of it.
yes, you're so right. We are afraid. Why are we so afraid of our emotions, ourself? Like, why?
Because again, I think we're just taught to avoid them. That's not what life is about. Um, and because it can bring up pain.
Mm,
So, which of course is always better if it's there, it's always better to express it and get it out. But people avoid pain. That's one of the
mm.
main things that they try to do their whole lives is avoid pain. And at some point it catches up with you.
Right? So exactly, because we all go through painful moments in our life. I
Yes.
don't think I've ever met not even one person who's never went through a painful moment
Yeah.
to upgrade themselves, I guess, to learn the lessons and to become the person that you're supposed to be, like you with your hair loss. And then it has led you into your life purpose, which is so beautiful and what you're supposed to be doing. Like me with
Thank you.
infertility journey and depression and
Mm,
endometriosis, and then it led me into doing this now.
yeah.
So, there's always a life lesson, and I just want people to know that there's more than just your looks. Okay, hair is, yes, important, I know, to a certain extent, but dig deep, find the why, learn about yourself, love yourself, live
Right.
that bliss off life. And when you live in bliss off life, or the BS life, you're not like focused on just the materialistic things. You're literally
Right.
focusing on like the outer picture, like the whole life that you can be living, which is a
Yes.
lot of beauty. Um,
Yes.
right? And that's what you teach too. So, we all have our own things and we
Yes.
all go through our own experiences. So that's so beautiful. Thank you for doing all that you do. And I
Thank
really
you.
love how you do this for a living, because this is a topic that needs to be talked about, like me with
It
women's
does.
health, right? Women's health is a taboo topic. The more we talk about it, the better we can make these topics more obtainable for women to really
Yes.
heal and learn and grow, and to really step into their power.
Yes, and
So,
I also, I try to empower women because it's a whole journey you go through with hair loss. First, there's the emotional aspects, but then, you have to deal with what's going on. You need to see if there are treatments available, see if you can keep the hair you have or maybe regrow some. You need to get a diagnosis and understand what's going on because unfortunately, hair loss can also be a sign of some underlying disease. So it's important anytime that there's something that's off in your body, you need to see a doctor and have blood tests done and be examined because it can be something that is more serious
yeah.
and that's coming out and showing itself by making your hair fall out. And you need to know what that is so you can treat it before it
Yeah.
gets worse. So, but I try to empower women to talk to their doctors. to not be
Mm.
intimidated by the doctor. I give them a checklist of, things that should happen and that they should ask the doctor, and kind of a little journal where they should write down everything the doctor says and how to tell if it's a good doctor or a bad doctor. So they're not all good.
Mm.
Um,
Yes.
so, um, and then, we also talk about ways that you can look better. There's camouflage. There's these like powders that are hair colored. And like I have a very wide part, so I can, dab it here, and then it looks a lot less thin. And then, of course, there are uh, what are called toppers, which they used to call hair pieces that go over your hair, but it covers the parts that are thin. And then there are wigs. And wigs these days look very, very natural. They look like it's growing out of your skin.
Yeah.
So, and for a lot of women, that makes them feel, sort of like, oh, I recognize myself again,
Oh,
because I now have hair again. So, I want to make sure that I cover kind of 360 degrees, the whole thing from all around. And the final thing we do is we make a plan for the future, because sometimes women will feel like, well, I have hair loss, and so I can't do the things that I always wanted to do anymore. That is now cut off to me. And of course, it's not true. But they start feeling that way. So we work together and we make goals. I ask them, well, set some goals for the next 12 months and make sure that you achieve those goals, because just because you have hair loss doesn't mean you can't have a happy life and achieve the goals that you always wanted to. And nothing is cut off to you. It's
yeah.
just one, you are not your hair, you are a whole person who has hopes and dreams, and you're entitled to them. So let's help you get them. So,
Amazing. Oh, that sounds fantastic. So if anybody has not, followed you or know who you are, I want people to know where they can find you and, look more into your coaching program if they wanted
sure.
to. So let people know.
Okay. Well, you can go to my website. Of course, it's https:// like with everything. And then Hair Loss Heroines is the name of the company. So it's all run together, hairlossheroines.com. And I am doing a special free training at the moment. So if you just add a slash and then free dash training, you can get a free training on hair loss. And it talks about the program. And if you're interested in the program, then we can talk about it more. And I also have a Facebook group. So it's, Facebook/groups/hair loss heroines. And it's called hair loss heroines because I think, if you have the courage to really look at all of this stuff, I think it takes courage. And if you have courage, it makes you a heroine.
Oh my gosh.
So I wanted women to feel positive, that if they're going through this, it's a hard thing to go through. And if you make it better, then you qualify as a heroine in my book. So it's everything is hair loss heroines. That's the name of the coaching program. And I'm Lauriann Greene. So
Amazing. Thank
um,
you so much.
oh, it's been a pleasure.
I
It's
love
great
that. I
talking to
love
you.
that name and I love how it goes. And, this is exactly what you're meant to do. So thank you for sharing this with the world and sharing it here with me and my listeners.
And thank you for what you do.
Thank
The
you.
bliss, we should all be living the bliss soft life.
Yes. Oh, I love it. I call it the BS life.
The BS life. Wow. BS, has another connotation, but we'll forget about
Exactly.
that. The
Yes.
bliss soft life.
Yes,
It's a
exactly.
great name.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.